Understanding seller-paid versus lender-paid credits towards closing costs. This video will help explain 3 common strategies that can help reduce the cash required to purchase a home. They are seller-paid closing costs, lender-paid closing costs, or a combination of both seller-paid and lender-paid closing costs. These strategies can help a client reduce the amount of cash needed to purchase a home by having the seller or lender provide credits towards their closing costs. It can also help a buyer purchase a home today instead of putting it off until they save more money down the road. Lastly, it can free up cash for possible home renovations. People often use credit cards after purchasing a home to finance their renovations. This strategy helps a buyer conserve cash at closing for their planned renovations and can help them avoid higher interest rate credit card debt after purchasing that home. Let's start by taking a look at what the cash requirement is for the purchase of a single-family home for $300,000 with an FHA loan and 3.5% down. With a purchase of $300,000, the down payment of 3.5% is about $10,500. The estimated closing costs are about $12,000. So the out-of-pocket cash needed from a buyer to purchase this home is $22,500. $22,500 might be more than what a first-time homebuyer has available, so let's take a look at some strategies that can help reduce that initial upfront expense. Seller-paid closing costs. This strategy is exactly as it sounds. The seller will pay a specific amount of the buyer's closing costs. Here's an example of how it would work building off of our previous example. Let's just assume that rather than finalizing a sales contract to purchase a home for $300,000, we offer the seller $312,000 for the same home, and request that they pay $12,000 towards the buyer's closing costs. Here's how it'll look. With a higher purchase price of $312,000, the down payment of 3.5% is increased to $10,920. The estimated closing costs remain the same at about $12,000. However, you now have a $12,000 credit from the seller at closing for the buyer's closing costs. So in the end, when you add these 3 together, the buyer's cash outlay for this purchase is approximately $10,920. With this scenario, you're essentially including the closing costs into the financing by working with a higher sales price. Lender credit for closing costs. In certain scenarios, we as a lender can help the buyer reduce their out-of-pocket expenses with a lender credit. Here's how it works. Let's assume the rate for an FHA mortgage is 4% on any given day. A lender has an option to offer a higher interest rate to the buyer, say 5% instead of 4%. This allows the lender to provide a credit to the buyer for their closing costs. So you can consider it a trade-off. In exchange for taking a higher interest rate, the buyer will receive a credit from the lender for their closing costs. Here's how our original example of a $300,000 purchase of a single-family home would look like with a lender credit. The purchase price remains the same at $300,000. The down payment of 3.5% remains the same as our first example at $10,500. The estimated closing costs are the same at about $12,000. However, we now have a lender credit for closing costs of about $8,837. This is roughly 3% of the loan amount. So the out-of-pocket cash requirement for the buyer to purchase this home in this example is $13,663. A combination of seller credit and lender credit. While the first 2 examples assume we proceed with either a seller credit or lender credit, we often find in real-world scenarios that it's more common to see a combination of both. Here's an example that looks at using both a seller credit and lender credit to help a buyer lower their initial cash outlay for our original example. The purchase price would now be $305,000 because we'll include a $5,000 credit for closing costs from the seller. The down payment of 3.5% would be $10,675. Estimated closing costs would remain the same at about $12,000. In this example, we'll have a smaller lender credit of $5,990, not quite as large as our last example, but still about 2% of the loan amount. Also, with this example, the interest rate increase won't be as large as our previous example because the lender credit isn't as large. When you add all the amounts together, the out-of-pocket cash requirement for the buyer to purchase a home with this example is $11,685. We hope this informational video has helped explain some commonly used strategies to help homeowners reduce their initial cash outlay for purchasing a home. We've used very general assumptions of costs and interest rates for our examples. Please keep in mind that different markets may require some of these estimates to be more or less than our examples. Also, all scenarios are subject to a buyer's qualifications. Thank you for watching, and don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions or would like additional information on how to make these strategies work for you.